So the way we're doing that is we have broken ourselves into 4 key action teams. Okay, let me see if I can share again. So Amanda, do you want to give a quick overview of the action teams and just what they are?
Absolutely. And you should be able to share now. And Steph, I'm really sorry about that. I was the one who muted you by accident. I thought I was muting other people, but I messed up. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Milstein. It is so lovely to see all of you here. And happy New Year to you all. I will give a quick overview of what the action teams are. And this is a relatively new initiative that we're really trying to get focus and get going in these specific areas. So broadly speaking, under the area of decarbonization, we have 2 teams that are very actively getting built up right now. One pertains to oil and gas. So how do we stop the drilling, extraction, fracking, refining that we know is killing us and going to continue to kill us if we don't stop it. And the flip side of that is how do we push for electrification and renewable energy in a way that is centering climate, health, and equity. So those are the 2 teams under decarbonization. We ultimately would like to have a team focused on transportation as well. So if that's something that's of interest to you, please let us know. The next team is focused on divestment with a really specific campaign right now that is targeted at U.S. health insurance companies who, unsurprisingly, are very heavily invested in fossil fuels. And this is a national campaign, so especially for those of you who are outside of California, this is certainly not California specific, and is really a broad group of organizations that are involved in this, of which Climate Health Now is one. And then the last team, certainly not least, but last on this list, is the Healthy Voting Team, which may soon have a different name as I understand it. But this team did a ton of work leading up to the presidential election and then also the runoff, the Senate runoff, woohoo. And is now trying to figure out basically reimagine themselves or figure out how and what they want to look like as we move hopefully beyond those 2 things and into the future. So those are our teams. If you are not already on a team or have questions or anything at all, please contact us, put it in the chat, message us. We want to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And then Amanda, can you put in the chat? So we'll say it now and later. So if you are not on Slack yet, which is our kind of key place that we communicate with each other, if you're not on there yet, or if you are talking about how great this meeting is later today and a health professional friend says, oh my God, I want to join, we want you to invite them, because we're word of mouth, and we're really about creating a real sense of community for health professionals who are activating on climate. And so we would love you to invite them. And the way to do that, Amanda will put in the chat, but it's basically to send an email to our Gmail, which is caclimatehealthnow@gmail, and then just do a brief intro where they practice, your intro is kind of their vouching, how we're validating that we're all health professionals. And we are definitely looking to grow. Our vision is to have a web across California of activated health professionals to really leverage the power of our community. So that's where we're at, and these are the teams that are bringing our goals forward for the year. So, and if you're visual like me, this is just a visual way of seeing that. But just to introduce, so Karina, if you want to say hi, Karina is our oil and gas director.
Hi.
Good. Karina's in the LA area. The electrification director.
That's me.
That's Amanda. All right.
Nice to see you guys again.
I have the prestige of the divestment campaign director, and then the healthy voting director is Cynthia, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Great. So this is how we're building our team. We're basically a colorful butterfly. So I'm going to turn it over right now to Jeff Mann, who's an orthopedist here in the East Bay area, which is where I live. And Jeff is one of our oil and gas action team co-leads. So Jeff's gonna just share a couple of announcements about the work that they're doing.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to see people from all over the country. That's very exciting. So there's a lot of things going on in oil and gas in California, and I know we're sort of focusing on here, at least for this meeting. And so one very interesting thing is next Wednesday, January 20th at 11 a.m., we are going to be speaking, several members of the oil and gas team are going to be speaking with California State Representative Scott Wiener. He is going to be introducing, or one of his colleagues, a ban on fracking in California. And so we are speaking with him about the health hazards of fracking. He probably isn't going to be there, but probably some of his legislative aides will be there. So everybody who wants to will be invited. So look on the Slack site. So again, that's next Wednesday at 11 o'clock. As we all know, that is the inauguration day. So there's a chance that, things could get changed at the last minute. But anyways, if you're interested in that, that should be very interesting and a good introduction to oil and gas. Also, one of the other things that we are looking at is there's another bill on setbacks from oil and drilling. And that was a bill that was introduced last year and it's going to be introduced again this year. And that's another thing the oil and gas team is sort of looking into and have been involved in that. And there's actually a very big network involved in that as well. And one other thing is I'm actually going to be giving a presentation this Sunday, which is January the 17th at 4 p.m. And that's with a group called 350 Contra Costa. And I did make an announcement of that on the Slack website. But that's at 4 o'clock at 3. And that's going to be about the health risks associated with oil and gas production. So again, another thing if you want some more information about that, and sort of another thing that the team does. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. We're really excited about that meeting. Obviously, we're trying to help Senator Wiener and the co-authors of the fracking bill to really center health and equity through our very available educational kind of presentation, and we're just trying to help them really see that that's a better frame than just banning fracking. So that's something that will be great to tune into, and we can also share it out by recording if you're not able to attend. I think we'll check on that. Okay, thank you, Jeff. So now I'm really excited to introduce one of our community allies, partners, Kobi, who's going to, I'll let you introduce yourself, but Kobi Naseck is with Vision and is going to kind of share an overview of CalGEM, which for those of you who might not know, it took me about 8 months to figure this out, but they used to be called Dogger, and CalGEM is the agency in California that gives out permits to extract oil and gas. And I believe California is the 7th largest producer of oil and gas in the country at this point. We used to be higher, number 3. So CalGEM is the agency who, if they decided to ban oil and gas extraction, they would be the ones who could stop handing out the permits. So really excited to have Kobi here to share with us about what's happening there with this really long process called the public health rulemaking, and then AB 345. So I'll turn it over to you, Kobi. Nice. You might be on mute. Kobi, are you there? Maybe not. So we're gonna pivot quickly, nimble, and we're gonna go to Lindsay, and then we'll come back. I might be surprising Kobi by being not late. So Lindsay, are you good starting now.
I'm happy to go when you want me to go. Yes. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'd love to share. So I met Lindsay a few months ago through a webinar that Climate Health Now co-hosted with San Francisco Bay Area. And it was about kind of the intersections of the climate crisis and racism, and how privileged communities can be good allies to the racial justice uprisings. And Lindsay presented there, and really excited to have you here, calling in from Georgia, to talk about the awesome organizing that you're doing, and how we can see working together this year to provide some of the training that you really do well to our members in particular.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Lindsay Harper again. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm National Coordinator for Arm in Arm. If you go to slide 2, please. Our grand strategic objective is to ignite a transformational era that ends the climate crisis, centering racial and economic justice. Okay. Centering the racial and economic justice is the part that we really lean into. I'm honored to be able to be a Black woman who is holding a national climate movement, because the issues of racial and economic justice are central to me and will be foundational, as what I bring to Arm in Arm, and making sure that people understand that the reason that we are in such dire straits is because, honestly, the policy and PhD folks do not and have not had all the answers. And so here we are. By not centering racial and economic justice has in turn rendered us unable to really achieve policy that keeps people safe. And so folks at Arm in Arm decided that this centering of racial and economic justice was the missing piece, and that in order for us to really achieve the goal of getting policy that ends the climate crisis, we have our tactics that we want to implement to do that. I'm going to talk about disruptive humanitarianism, and I'll also talk about our theory of change. If you could go to the next slide, please. So just quickly, so I'm sure y'all are familiar with Sunrise. We are essentially the adult support version of Sunrise, just to put it very clearly and plainly, the 35 and up. We're a place, it's for everyone, of course, can join, but we understand that, young folks have many places to plug in, and the young folks get it. It's the folks who are, a little bit older, who need a place, a vehicle, a community, capacity, infrastructure in order to achieve and plug in and to be the support that's really needed, again, to achieve what we're trying to achieve. We're really looking to move towards mass escalation. That's what Arm in Arm is about. It's going to take all of us to move the 3.5% of the population it's going to take to win. Now, 3.5% is the magic number, and it's up to 3.5%, which is very exciting. Forgive me for not remembering the woman's name, but she did a bunch of research and basically found out that you can topple dictators with 3.5%. And so that's around 11 million people. And again, it's up to 11 million people, so it could be less, which is very exciting. The idea is we are looking to organize individuals and not organizations. Now, that's not to exclude organizations, but we're giving a place for individuals, people who are the subject matter experts of their own communities, to really plug in and to, we're looking for folks to align and adhere to the Arm in Arm values and principles, and then utilize the vehicle of Arm in Arm to then kind of customize what their active disruptive humanitarianism might look like. If you go to the next slide, please. So our theory of change is that essentially we have way too many passive folks, neutrals and passive folks on climate, right? I mean, this is really not the time for incrementalism. We need action, and we need decisive, adequate action now. So the idea is to utilize acts of disruptive humanitarianism to really draw a line in the sand and drive a wedge between our opposition and their supporters, to draw people over to our side, per se. If you could go to the next slide, please. So when talking about disruptive humanitarianism, it's highlighting the injustice and absurdity of the world we live in and the laws we live under by doing humanitarian deeds that disrupt people's normal routines. The example that I use often, and as you all begin to think about what disruptive humanitarianism may look like where you live, I will be telling your stories when I'm talking to other folks. But some of the story that I'll share with you now is a guerrilla garden. One of the ideas that we have is, they have postcards that are seed paper. It would be really, really cool to write a letter to someone in your community sharing your concerns about, some of the fossil fuel and oil and gas construction that you've spoken about. And you can ask that person, hey, take this postcard and go plant it in an abandoned lot, where they're not doing anything, where there's a food desert, where there's low access to food. You're assuming that, of course, those in charge will tell you that you can't plant food in an abandoned lot, but the idea is that who disagrees with a garden? The policies that are in place have already allowed for that area to be a food desert in the first place. So why is it that planting food is wrong, a wrong thing to do? Blocking streets off to deliver food. We've also had some of our folks in the Arm in Arm universe who put fake body bags outside of Klobuchar's home and had climate signs. That's disruptive to her normal routine, but really trying to make the point that we need action and we need it now. If you go to the next slide, please. So just wanting to share with you that we have engagement tools that are available to you right now. Just wanting to share them with you. If you text Arm in Arm CAHI to 71777, you can fundraise for the California-Hawaii Arm in Arm region. There are 7 of them in the Arm in Arm universe. And we are looking to lean into some of the fossil fuel concerns and also looking to put together a health professional training team to work with health professionals on how Arm in Arm could really be utilized within your community, because you all are in a very different space from folks like myself who are more of an activist grassroots context. One of the hub that we'll be leaning into right now, and there's someone from North Carolina on the line. We also have a Charlotte hub. We can talk more about that later. And I have a document that talks about some of the other hubs we have in the universe. But again, this is an opportunity for folks to do acts of disruptive humanitarianism. Arm in Arm offers a training. You can learn about basically how we kind of got to the socioeconomic political moment, and more importantly, how we can move forward and to apply pressure when it's needed to, again, get policy that protects people. I'm gonna put in the chat for you some of the links for training, the dates for training, and the curricula. So what you'll learn the introduction to Arm in Arm. You'll learn the Arm in Arm story, structure, and strategy. You learn more about cultivating a culture of anti-racism, again, because we're centering racial and economic justice. You'll learn more about nonviolent direct action and get training in that. And then you'll also learn the Arm in Arm song. Yes, we have an Arm in Arm song. So I believe, is that the last slide? I believe so. Yes, that's the last slide. So what I'll do is, of course, I'll take questions whenever, and the information that I just mentioned, I will put in the chat for you now.
Mm-hmm. And I would thank you, Lindsay, so much. I see so much opportunity for synergy with our groups. And so Lindsay will put the upcoming introduction trainings that Arm in Arm is offering. And I did one of those in the fall, and it was like an introduction to civil humanitarian.
Disruptive
humanitarianism. Disruptive humanitarianism. And or civil disobedience. And I think I can imagine that around fracking and oil and gas extraction in California, there will be an opportunity for the medical community to be a part of civil disobedience, to demand change in a non-incremental way. And so we would love if some could join one of these upcoming trainings that Lindsay just put, January 22nd, 23rd, 12th, and 13th. And especially if you could check that out, kind of see if this is something that interests you. And our vision is to, from people who participate in those introductory trainings, that we then actually develop a kind of medical team who will then work with me and Lindsay to provide kind of a medical team specific introductory training, because we want to kind of customize it for medical professionals and help it kind of land in a really specific way for our specific tool set. So really looking for partners on that. And if this is something that calls to you, I would definitely recommend taking one of those trainings, which I did myself and it was great. And then that's something that we're hoping to build across the year. Yeah. And our vision roughly is to offer one of those introductory trainings to civil disobedience in May or so. So if you're interested, definitely tune in. All right, Christine, great. Wonderful, thank you so much. Do we have maybe a couple of questions if anybody has any for Lindsay? Covered it all? Okay, wonderful. So thank you. And then we're gonna turn back to the our other guest speaker, Kobi. So Kobi, glad you're here. Are you on board with your volume on?
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yeah, great. So I did your intro a little bit earlier, that you're joining us from Vision and are going to give us kind of an overview of the CalGEM health rulemaking process and AB 345. So it's all you. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed getting to know a few of y'all at Climate Health Now more. So I'm really excited to deepen this relationship. And also it was great to hear from you, Lindsay. I am definitely a product of Sunrise and a huge believer in NVDA as a way to accomplish change around climate. And I also just want to make a plug, like, you know, when you think about this disruptive humanitarianism and showing up for an action, when you see someone in a white coat, that is just like so impactful. To see someone in a white coat or a nurse's outfit or scrubs taking a risk, it really sends a huge message to people that, you know, they need to pick a side, which is kind of what we're trying to do. So yeah, thanks for having me. We're switching gears to talk about AB 345 and the setbacks. And that's what I'm here to do. So curious if people can just maybe share in the chat if you are familiar with when I say health and safety setbacks, what that means. So drop a plus in the chat if you have some knowledge of health and safety setbacks, and then I'll give you an idea of maybe how much I need to go into. Okay, Lindsay says not familiar. I got a few pluses. Okay, great. Seems like we have a couple folks who are familiar, but I'm gonna give the presentation anyways as it is. So let's go to the next slide. All right, first slide, please. So like Ashley said, my name is Kobi. I'm the Coalition Coordinator for Vision or Vision. That stands for Voices in Solidarity Against Oil in Neighborhoods. We're a coalition of around 10 environmental justice, health and safety, frontline community organizations across the state, mostly in LA and Kern County, which is Bakersfield, and including one Indigenous organization who are working to get oil and gas extraction and pollution out of neighborhoods. And Vision formed for a reason. The reason was that there was no statewide body or organization or coalition that was just environmental justice organizations, right? A lot of the change that happens in California on climate issues is led by big greens, like really big organizations with lots of money and funding and power, like the Sierra Club or others. And their goals don't totally align with the people who are on the ground, who are in frontline communities. So that's why Vision formed, because we knew that our communities needed setbacks. And yes, this picture is crazy. This is just what people in Kern County and Los Angeles, where 80% of drilling in California happens, live with. So we're talking about setbacks. That means a minimum distance between where you can extract oil and gas in California and sensitive receptors, which is where people live, go to school, go to work, and also including prisons. And it looks like we lost the slides, but that's okay. I can keep talking.
Give me a minute.
No worries.
I don't know what happened.
That's okay. I'm just gonna keep going.
Thanks,
So
Kobi.
yeah, setback means that you can't extract oil and gas within an area. Within 2,500 feet is the minimum distance that we know to be like achievable between where people live and go to school and work, and healthcare facilities and prisons and oil and gas extraction. 2,500 feet is really the bare minimum. If you think about it, that's half a mile. It's like we're really not asking for much. But the reality is that over 7 million people in the state of California live within half a mile of an oil and gas extraction site. And of those 7 million people, the majority of them, over 5 million, would identify as like being from a community of color. So that's why this work is important. We know there's no minimum safe distance from oil and gas extraction. There's downwind, there's groundwater, but right now we're just trying to get the bare minimum to get it away from where people live. Okay, looks like we're back.
Sorry about that.
No worries. It's Zoom. It's just Zoom everything. So let's see if we can get the next one. Okay, perfect. So wait, actually, if we can go back a bit, there was one point that I forgot. So there's 2 ways to get setbacks in California. The first one is through the legislative process, and the second one is through the administrative process, right? So to get setbacks through the administrative process means getting pressure on an agency called CalGEM, which is under the Newsom administration, which is the California Geologic Energy Management Agency, and it's supposed to regulate oil and gas. Over 400 days ago, more than a year ago, CalGEM set out with this intention and was ordered by the government in a press release, so non-binding, to start working on this issue of setbacks. And they've been dragging their feet for more than a year. Meanwhile, our communities are suffering. We were really hoping they were going to come out with a draft distance December 31st in this past year, but it didn't happen. So now it looks less like this change will happen through the administration and more through the legislative side of things. So that's where Vision is pivoting our efforts and why we need y'all's help. So Ashley, could you go to the previous slide with Al Marisucci's face on it? Yeah, okay, great. So to get setbacks to happen, we're introducing legislation called AB 345. And it was introduced by Assemblymember Al Marisucci last year. It's a little bit unclear right now who is going to be the main author. It might be him again. We're still kind of finalizing it before the legislative session starts in February. But essentially what AB 345 does is it defines what a sensitive receptor is. So where you can't have fossil fuel extraction within 2,500 feet of. And then it makes sure that people can participate in the regulatory process and our voices will be heard. And then it makes this 2,500 foot draft distance in law. Okay, now we're good to keep going. Okay, why AB 345? These are all pictures from Los Angeles. The one on the right is from Signal Hill, I believe. Or no, these are the Culver City oil fields, actually, for those of y'all who are in LA. And let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so why AB 345? The first reason is that this is a racial justice issue in California. Like I said earlier, the main communities that are impacted by this issue are not white upper class communities. These are overwhelmingly communities of color and the low income communities. If you think about where you see oil derricks, maybe for those of y'all who are in LA or Kern County, you know, these are not in places where white people historically are able to buy homes and live. So what this means is that all of the negative health impacts, of which there are many, of living near oil and gas extraction sites are being overwhelmingly endured by people of color and communities of color. So we're talking about asthma, we're talking about exposure to benzenes that cause cancer, everything from like random headaches and nosebleeds to, in some like more severe cases, people who develop like severe chronic respiratory issues or like recurring bronchitis. And then we also know it impacts students and teachers quite a bit. It's hard to concentrate in school when you have a huge, loud, extraction site next to your house where there's trucks coming through, day and night, and they're setting out fumes and there's lights on all the time. All right, next slide. Of the biggest health impacts is the impact that we learned last year on reproductive health. So a recent study came out, there's actually been 2 studies on this issue, one from Berkeley and one from Stanford, that essentially say the closer you live to oil and gas extraction in California, the more likely you are to have a high-risk pregnancy. We were all sort of thinking that this would be the headline or the issue that would finally at last galvanize broad public support on this issue. And what we've seen is that people do care, but not enough people know, and our legislators don't know. This is kind of this is a serious impact. And thanks, Amanda, for dropping the link right there. You're so ready. Let's go next slide. Lastly, it's an environmental justice issue. It's not a question of whether or not we know oil extraction in neighborhoods is bad. We know, and we know that it happens overwhelmingly in communities of color. And environmental justice to us means that nobody, no matter their identity or where they live, should bear a worse impact of pollution, right? But that's just overwhelmingly not the case. So we're trying to tell a story that actually this is a part of the framework of white supremacy and the oil and gas industry that we're seeing in California. So I think we're almost on here. Next slide. The last health impact that I want to share with you all as people in the healthcare community and professionals is we know that living near a place that has worse air quality can lead to a higher chance of mortality or a more serious case of coronavirus. So what we have now is communities and people who are sheltering in place in their homes when a few hundred feet from their bedroom window, which is open to get some fresh air, they're breathing in fumes and particulate matter and PM 2.5 that is making them more vulnerable and making us all more vulnerable to coronavirus in these outbreaks. So there's a pretty clear reason why not only do we need these setbacks, but we need them now. This is an urgent issue that is affecting so many people in California. And then let's go next. We also know that this is overwhelmingly something people in California are in favor of, right? So we have, you can see here, 76% of people, which is so many people in this survey that the NRDC ran a few months ago, were in support of this. So here's our situation. And I'm gonna pause here to kind of let this sink in. We know it's bad. We know it's a racial justice issue that impacts communities of color and low-income communities more than white communities. And we know that there's broad public support for these setbacks. So the question remains, why haven't they happened? And the reason is because our representatives and our governor are captured by fossil fuel interests and the money that comes with it. So it's up to us to really throw down for this legislation and make it happen and say, we have enough champions who are inside the California Assembly and the Senate who are going to work on this, and we need you to be brave and pick a side and choose the health of the people. I think this might be the last slide. Yep. So I'm gonna pause here just before I go for questions, just say how y'all can help. And there's a few ways to help coming up. So the legislation is going to be introduced in February. It'll start in the California Assembly, and then it'll go into the California Senate, and then hopefully it'll be signed by Governor Newsom next fall. We've got a list of targets, meaning key people in the legislation who we need to sway, and we need to say, pick a side and pick the right side. So that's what we're going to be working on starting in February. We've got a plan for distributed op-eds and distributed letters to the editor. If you are a healthcare professional and you feel that your voice is missing in this in your community, we can get you set up to write a letter to the editor or an op-ed. We've got some action ideas maybe this would be like a great collab. People who go to Lindsay's training and learn the basics of NVDA and feel inspired can take a creative action with one of the targets that we have identified for AB 345 and help push this envelope and push the needle more on climate action and protecting frontline communities. And the last thing is we're going to be doing tons and tons and tons of phone calls. So once we've got those target people set up, we're going to make sure that we're doing outreach in their districts. I know we have folks here mostly, I think, in Northern California, but also across the state or maybe even across the country, I heard. So we'll make sure that y'all know how you can call in and how you can use your voice as a healthcare professional to call for setbacks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, LA in the house, I see that. So yeah, I think we're just about at time. I'll pause for questions, but thank you so much for having me. I hope you learn more about why AB 345 is probably the most important piece of California environmental legislation coming up this year, in addition to the fracking bill. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
So I didn't fully see how beautifully that would come together. But Lindsay, Kobi, yes, these two presentations, I think, really show what we're working on is kind of upping the ante and mobilizing, organizing our medical community to apply more pressure. And I think this year that will involve civil disobedience. So we got to get trained. We won't offer CME for it, but we should. So thank you both. We have definitely some time for questions if there are any for either Lindsay or Kobi or both.
I put one was in the chat from earlier about how Vision's goals differ from Sierra Club's, and then there's a few more other recently in the chat.
Yeah, I can answer the chat questions. Thanks for bumping that, Karina. I think I want to say I use the Sierra Club as an example of some of the bigger organizations that typically have a lot of sway in the environmental space in California. You know, these are really big organizations, like if you've heard of like NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, or Sierra Club, a lot of organizations in the Last Chance Alliance. I would say almost all these organizations, everyone is like a huge supporter of vision, but I think it's a difference in strategy and goals, meaning that, you know, these big orgs like Sierra Club tend to work from the top down. They've got email lists and they've got a goal that is set by a few people in an organization, whereas vision is made up of grassroots community members who are coming together to try and see what is the biggest issue in our communities. So it's more from the bottom up, saying these are what communities in California want, rather than people who might be looking at the big policy pictures and trying to figure out, you know, what works with funders and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a grass tops versus grass bottoms, grassroots difference. Mm-hmm. And then the other questions in the chat, Marnie says, does Vision organize any neighborhood walks to see these places firsthand? Can you share contact information? Yes, I'll definitely share my contact information. I can drop my email in the chat in a few seconds. Vision can definitely organize neighborhood walks in Kern County and LA. We're working right now to put together a virtual tour and like a gallery. So you can see more of these pictures and have access to use these pictures. I'd be curious to connect with you more one-on-one, Marnie, but yeah, that is something that is that is possible. Right now, yeah, we're working on a gallery and then also like a Google Maps template map. So you can see like pictures and the actual sites that we have decided are some of the most like nefarious. For example, Bakersfield College in Kern County, right across from the school, there's like 30 oil derricks. Like literally just like the road is all that separates them. So yeah, we're putting that together, more to come soon, but if anyone wants information on how to take a tour, please reach out. Marnie, maybe we can connect later.
I think Tom, did you have a question too? McComb?
Yeah, I just probably a clarification and maybe some suggestion. Thanks, that's really interesting, and I've been aware of this for quite a while. having worked on the fracking study for the state of California. And just being amazed at how many oil wells there are in neighborhoods of Los Angeles. It's just, when you see it from the 5,000 foot level, just dots everywhere. So I guess the question, I'm a little interested in making sure this is well grounded in the health consequences, because I think once the legislation gets argued, a lot of people try and kind of divide and conquer. So they'll focus maybe on benzene. Well, you can go in and maybe show benzene isn't as big a problem as you think it is, or and the important thing is that there are actually multiple levels of health impact going on, and we have to, I think, continue to document those. There's noise. I mean, noise, a lot of the health effects you talk about are linked actually to noise and stress from equipment and visual effects. And there's actually good research on this. So people get sleep deprivation, and sleep deprivation leads to all kinds of diseases that you might think are actually pollution related, but they're probably only enhanced by pollution levels. So I think a little bit of really getting this grounded in more documentation of, no, this is really making people sick. And it isn't like you can take it apart and say, well, it's not the benzene, it's not this. No, it's all of it integrated together, and it's the multiple stressors interacting that really cause populations to become ill across the board with all these radicals.
Yeah, I think that's our message. We're not basic researchers, and we're not climate scientists, and we embrace that. We're clinicians, and we're caring for the overall health impacts. And I think there's so much evidence that already exists, but we really see our strength as speaking to the evidence, but telling the story and translating that into a human story. So I thank you for that. I want to flag, so Amanda at 12:47 put a link in the chat. And if you haven't done this already, if everybody could take a minute or two to complete our demographic questionnaire. So last fall, an eternity ago, when AB 345 version 1.0 was in the Senate committee that had only 5 California state senators who basically determined that it died last year. They were not in Northern California. And so we saw that we probably would have had more success if we'd had an immediate map of where Climate Health Now members were in different districts across California. And like I said earlier, our vision is to have a networked web across California where whatever, insufficiently progressive senator or congressperson is kind of on the fence about either one of these bills, the fracking or AB 345, where we can activate our members in those more conservative districts to become extremely loud and vocal in support. So we need to create that map, and this is about organizing so that we can mobilize really effectively when time is of the essence. So if you could put in your zip code, where you live, all that will help us so that when those really time sensitive moments come up again, we will be able to just kind of go there and like call our people and get those white coats and stethoscopes and symbols of trust to be really vocally advocating.
Can I put in one very quick plug on that? That demographic questionnaire takes less than 2 minutes. It's really quick, and that allows us to really contact, reach out, find your interests, help guide you to become active, get in the teams where you can really make a difference, and these geographic hubs that Ashley was talking to. So we'd love to get more connected. Please do that.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe one other question for either Lindsay or Kobi. Amanda, do you have a question?
I can ask a question. I don't want to take it. If anyone else has a question, I will give up my question, but I have one if no one does.
Go for it.
I am curious, Lindsay and Kobi, for you both, how you think, so we are a group of health professionals, and we are coming with that specific, many of us on this call are physicians or nurses, but we have a variety of health professionals. And so we are wanting and recognizing the incredible importance of of having that professionalism be forefront, but also conveying the incredible urgency and seriousness of what we are talking about. And so I'm curious how you would, what advice you would have for us on how to achieve both of those things well, if you have any thoughts on that. Especially, I would say, in regard to things like disruptive humanitarianism, whatever you want to call, direct action, creative action.
Lindsay first.
No, Kobi, did you want to go?
You go first. You go first.
Well, that's a great question. I would offer you that when you asked the question initially, they didn't seem to be two different things to me. I did not see them as not being able to be achieved. The second thing was I didn't necessarily know what that would look like. I would almost want to I would ask you all actually that question, and happy to, can be more than one conversation. And so I would offer you all, we can have more conversations. I would invite you all to come to our universe regions and committees calls to have those conversations with other people who may be able to, that's the whole point. We can do this together. We don't have to do it apart. So that would just be my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a really similar reaction to Lindsay, which in my head, professionalism in the medical field and the healthcare field actually requires this kind of work. Like a true medical professional, maybe that's a frame you could take, is someone who, won't just treat people who come in the clinic for asthma, but who will say, here's what we need to do to make sure we don't have to treat people for asthma, right? That's one thing that jumped into my head, but I think it's, it's definitely a bigger conversation. And I would also just say to take a page from probably an Arm in Arm training or Sunrise training book, which is one of the best ways to do that is to start by finding out what your personal story is and how you can tell your story and share that. So just trying to make this answer as short as possible. Think of the most compelling stories that you have heard from colleagues, maybe in the coronavirus crisis, and what they shared and how it made you feel, and think about how you can tell your story and get that same feeling to get people to act on climate. Mm-hmm. That's a really great way to say, this is my voice as a healthcare professional. Here's what we need to do. And when you can do it that way, I think it comes across as not maybe scientific jargon, but it's easily accessible and cuts through right to anyone who's listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lindsay, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. And if I can add on to that, I actually had a conversation yesterday, and we were saying that it's actually an act of it's a humanitarian act to increase someone's access to something, to remove barriers. So thinking about removing barriers could be one way that's getting people what they need, and whatever that means to you where you are. And I would also say that, people clearly, and again, this is Lindsay's 2 little cents, people take y'all for granted. You're going to show up, you're going to come, you're going to go to work, you're going to do the things, you're going to give me what I need, you're going to give me the medicine, I can treat you like trash, you're still going to do, and I'm not trying to be pejorative, I've watched the TV shows, I've seen it. So I'm just saying, something to disrupt people's automatic entitlement to your energy services. You know what I'm saying? Mm. Not in a way that puts anyone in danger, but that disrupts the ideas. Now, wait a minute now, I'm a person. I think, and you all, I think it's a great, great, great time for y'all to do that right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People are not entitled. People are not entitled, obviously, because we wouldn't be having these issues if people were entitled, right? Yeah. I think attacking the sense of entitlement would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So an ongoing conversation for sure. And we're really grateful. Climate Health Now is really grateful, especially for both kind of the work that Vision is doing and Arm in Arm, and thank God for partnerships. So we don't have to be the experts, we just have to know the right people, and we do. So thank you both for showing up and sharing and your work and solidarity. So closing out, I think Karina, if you could maybe put in the chat the upcoming dates and times for our action team meetings so that people can kind of put those in to their calendars if you're interested. So that would be for the electrification action team, oil and gas divestment, which is January 25th at 12:30, I think. And then for the healthy voting team. So those, we really want everybody to kind of join the team that resonates the most for you, and to co-create this crazy Climate Health Now that we're moving along. And then for our community meetings, the next one will be February 10th, and we're swinging back to the morning. So that'll be 8:30 to 10. And then in March, we'll be back to lunchtime. So these are our community meetings for the upcoming 6 months. And one more time, so if, again, you're talking to a colleague who is excited about kind of what we're doing, we would love for you to help them link arms with us. And we would do that by, if you could send an email to, again, caclimatehealthnow@gmail.com, and then just introduce them, kind of let us know how you know them, where they practice, and then we'll link them in. And thanks everybody for doing the demographic form so that we can create our web of power across the state. And really appreciate everybody joining. Thanks for spending your precious time. We don't take that for granted, and we will see you soon. And also the invite, look out for the invite for the fracking presentation that we'll be doing for Senator Wiener's office, which is led, again, thanks Jeff Mann. We're doing that next Wednesday at 11. So look out for the invites, as well as Amanda will send out a summary of today. And I think that's it. Did I cover it all?
Thank you guys. And we're going professional this month. We're going to have a newsletter in MailChimp. So get excited. Coming to an inbox near you.
Yay. Great.
Yay.
Yeah. So thank you all. And if this is your first meeting, welcome. We're glad you're here. And just make sure that you follow up with one of us to kind of get on Slack and get linked in for making a difference in 2021, for protecting everything we all love. That's what we're about. Great.
All right.
Okay.
Arm
Take
in
care.
arm, heart in heart.
Bye.
Hi, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks again, Kobi and Lindsay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so
much.
much.